Kak Nilam for joining with us today. I think we had a conversation before this just to like try to see where actually the link between education, digital and economic is. But I think one most important point that will be like a kick-off question for this time is you, Banisa, mentioned to me about when we see the women position, we have to see it in early stage of education because that's where like all stuff begins. Can you please like elaborate a bit on how actually like gender issues is currently setting in education, especially informal education, and what's the barriers?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Selamat sore semua. I'm Nisa from the Pusat Studi Pendidikan dan Kebijakan. It's an NGO. It's a foundation that we are supporting the government, especially for the formulation and the implementation of education policy. So we work in the field of education policy mainly, but actually it's not just education in a very it's broad. The way we define education is broad. So right now, for example, we're working with the ComDG, supporting them in the formulation of the policy about child protection in the digital world. It's part of education. That's how we see it. So we see education as both what's happening in school and outside the school, because you as a child is like 24/7, and that's how much you learn every day. So working in the education, especially in education policy, one thing that I can reflect upon my experience for working in this area is that it's a very unique system. Like majority of teachers in Indonesia are female, but majority of the leaders are males. So you can still sense that it's still the institution is still like a male institution in terms of policy making process, but the one who need to implement those policies are mainly females. So that's why I think it's very important to criticize the metrics the government use for assessing the gender equality issues in education. Because if you see the data, for example, dropout school, you mentioned earlier, and we see that it seems like male has more problems in that area than female, which is true in terms of the data. Yeah, that the majority of dropout school children it's not a girl's problem, but also boys' problem. Even higher among the boys than girls. So, and then Indonesia, I really want to appreciate the government about this. Like, as a majority of Muslim country, all the madrasah are open for male and female. So there's no separation in terms of the education opportunity, in terms of the policy. Except for, of course, if you go to pesantren, there's a pesantren specific for male students and female students. But the opportunity are open, so we don't have any policies that discriminate female. That's on paper. And then in the school, if you use the PISA learning as a learning outcomes measures, you see that girls tend to outperform boys as well in PISA, and also in the national standardized test, what we call as an assessment national, female students tend to perform higher than male students. And also we have a community-based assessment that we develop, our organization developed, called Pemantik. It's for basic literacy and numeracy. Again, female students outperform male students. But in that assessment that we do, we try to collect also the qualitative data. What's happening in the classroom? Why is it easier for female students, girls in elementary school, to increase their literacy, to be able to read, than boys? It's about stereotype as well. Because it's okay for boys to, hang out and play soccer outside. Meanwhile, so our education system, our pedagogy is still very female or feminine, I would say. So the teachers will teach you how to obey, how to, and that's not it's okay for boys to be naughty, against the rules, but it's not okay for female. And for us, that is one thing that can explain why the performance is higher for female, because our education system teaches to be like that. Okay, so, but education is not just about learning outcomes, right? It's not just about the literacy, numeracy score, but it's a place where children spend most of their times. And how about the quality of their lives in the schools? This is where it starts to see the difference. Like only 40%, less than 40% even, schools at the sekolah menengah, at the middle school level or secondary schools, that separate toilets for boys and girls. Why this is a problem? Of course, we found that when girls have menstruation, they have difficulties with that facilities. Therefore, in some areas, some students decided to not going to school when they're having period, because it's difficult for them to have a hygiene needs. So that's another issue. And then how about the textbook? How is the female representation in the textbooks? What is the expectation of teachers? Again, I return to that. So that's why I think it's very important for education sector to see gender equality issues not only in the disparity or attainment or access to education and education outcome. That is usually only two measures that we use. But I want to share something before I leave back to you. But right now I'm involved in a project developed by UNESCO, also UCL in Indonesia, is to have like a new system in assessing gender equality in education and through education. I think this is very important because we no longer have two dimensions of assessing gender equality, but six. And part of the 6 indicators is about values and also opportunities. I think these are 2 important indicators in Indonesia. That explains why, for example, you mentioned about STEM, why after finishing high school, only less than 20% of the female graduates from SMA or the secondary schools are interested in engineering and science. Is because of the stereotype and the expectation, and this is a man field, it's not for female, and so on. So these are not measured by achievement and by attainment. So it's very important to also see how the values of education are different between male and female students. The expectation can be very different between female students and male students. And that is something that students learn along the way as they go through the educations. Also, this is what the world expects me as a woman. So that's why I think that also explains in education and in as the outcome why lots of teachers are female, but then the leaders are male. That's something that they also learn in education system. Maybe I stop there first before I get too long.
That's really interesting because I just realized that actually in terms of the system, at some point school are still like male-dominated system, but very much like whosoever play a part in it actually women. So we put it as an attribute then. We put women as an attribute.
Can I give one example about that?
Yeah,
my experience in having like series of meetings with the people at the ministries, there are multiple ministries there, about early childhood education. All the arguments among these male-dominated conversation about early childhood is about the importance of early childhood for the children's development and their investment for the human capital and so on and so forth, which is true. But something they forget is that having attainable, affordable, and quality early childhood education can help mothers today. Because lots of female workers, they cannot afford early childhood because it's not part of the compulsory education right now. So mainly in Indonesia, early childhood education is provided by private or not by the government. So it's not affordable, and the quality is so vary between one and another. It's not affordable, so you can imagine that female workers and female drivers, like online ojek drivers, they could really use the affordable and high quality early childhood, and nobody talk about that in the room. So we had to raise that issue to emphasize why we need that solutions today instead of later, instead of thinking about the 15 years from now for the children. It can solve the problems, today's problems.
That's a lot to unpack, actually. I really want to go more, but I know that we touch base about formal education and the system, and it's already like provoking lots of like questions right now from us. But for people who already fell out of the system, because we know that the school drop rate is like undeniable, mentioning poverty, for example, and like ability, especially if you're in rural areas, it's so hard to obtain proper educations. And for people who already fell off that system, I know that you, Banilam, and your team do some kind of like a technical assistance for one of the sector that always people try to put women in is actually MSMEs. It comes across of backgrounds of educations, I know that for sure. And I know that you do a lot of work about bringing digital literacy for people, who, especially for women in MSMEs. Would you like to explain a bit about your effort and also what is actually like potential challenge and what's good so far that you have done here?
Thank you, Barita. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nilam from BRI Research Institute. We are now in our second year being a digital access program partner in West Java, Lampung, and Lombok. Talking about women in Indonesia is very hard. As you know, being a woman, a mother of the house, they have to choose to run a business to help the family well-being or take care of the family, take care of the child. One time, if the head of the family, the male, cannot afford the family well-being, of course, the mother have to think what to eat today, what to eat tomorrow, what I have to do for supporting my family. But another time, they have to think about taking care of the early phase of raising child. So very hard being a woman. We've met many women have potential to be a good entrepreneur, but we realized that Melissa talked about before the education foundation. We see them having less confidence to be more. First one, the mindset. They are very, they feel enough with what they have today. In fact, far from the prosperity, to be honest, but they feel enough. And also, there is no enough confidence. They don't think they can adapt technology, adapt digital tools well. They have no endurance to commit, to learn more, because many responsibilities in the house. So we try to set up some simple guidelines. We ask them to try to adapt some digital tools. We try with the 3 simple steps. The first step is you try to try the online transactions. So the customer can easy to pay whether to want to buy their products. Second, they need to learn how to keep the financial records because they are very clueless about managing finance in their business. And the third one, try to have more confidence to sell your products online. This is very hard to be an enabler to this women entrepreneur because we are not as enabler, but we have to support them to gaining the confidence. We need to make them see they can because of the basic foundation of the education. But in reality, they also meet challenges from the surroundings. One story I want to share this afternoon. One of our beneficiary of digital access program in Lombok, we call her Bu Lin. They say she shares her story. One time, somebody calls her from Jakarta, Bu Lin in Lombok. The man. He said he wants to buy all her products. He asked for the total price for all products. But in the end of the conversation, he told her that he will give some extra money to buy a Butlin plane ticket to Jakarta to stay overnight with him.
Oh, okay.
So it's very cruel. It's very sad. There is opportunity and Butlin enthusiasts to sell all the products, but in reality, the man has another motive.
Yeah.
So it's very sad for being a woman entrepreneur.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very sad situation actually. But I think I try to link what you have mentioned before about safe system, but also like safe space. I think safe space is like something that really important to provoke women to be able to contribute either in education and also economy. Any thoughts along of your research that you are currently doing or your experience, but in formal setting, on how we can have a school as a safe space for women, for girls?
Okay, again, in terms of policies, there is very explicit policies that about the violence in school. Released just recently, though, unfortunately just recently, but at least we have now. At two levels of education, at higher education and also at the basic and secondary education. So it's very clear how the violence is defined. It's not just about gender violence, but it's also including gender-based violence. And also there's a monitored, they are also monitored by the assessment. The national assessment is attached with a survey. We call it Survei Lingkungan Belajar or School Climate Survey, in which that students and teachers are asked to respond to questions about safety, including sexual harassment and everything that they experience there. The data is not open for public because, again, it can be very, but some of us can access the data actually. Interestingly, so I really appreciate that the government movement about this. But then if we look into deeper again, why the data is not published and it's very limited, and also even some schools, including their teachers, are complaining about those questions because according to them, touching is okay because it shows affection between teachers and students. But when the student says that, I feel like it's a violence, they don't respect that. So the way violence is defined in our education system is still biased, and it's not, it's about culture. It's very difficult to reinforce about this issue because of culture. So teachers think, even in some schools, when I went to some areas, the teachers are very technical. They don't even know the philosophical behind about touching and everything. So the teacher said, okay, so tell me, then where can I touch my students? Like, is head okay? Is hand okay? Is like okay? Rather than, and I asked them back, why do you think you need to touch them? If you want to teach them how to write, then just show them, and if you need to touch them, just fingers. Why do you think you need to touch your students? So those kind of violence is still not understood by some teachers. So while the policies are there, but the implementer of that policy still have different definitions about what violence are. It's still a big problem in our education system too. So, but policy is important. I think that's why also that's based on our theory of change. Otherwise, we won't do advocating for policies. But at least the policies will be the reference for the teachers about what they should think about. So it's in a transition process towards the more safe school, but the long-standing traditions of that culture is still there. That's why part of the discussion in AGEE project with UNESCO and UCL and other experts in the room was one of the indicators that we need to pay attention in our education system is the teachers' understanding about gender inequality and about the gender violence issues, because they may not understand that.
Yeah. I actually have one more question, but I just want to check on how many minutes we still have and whether we still can open for questions.
Can we take a couple of questions from the audience?
Yes, yeah, happy to, yeah. Just quickly on that, I think the similar things also happen with the way, I mean, it goes by with women nowadays when they are in like MSME situation, for example, because I think in terms of doing the trainings as well, you need to set up it in a very safe space as well, right? I think I hold that, but in case anyone have any questions to raise, now it's your chance. Probably you can take one or two.
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Marina. I'm from Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. And I would like to ask about the first one, sorry?
Nisa?
Yeah, Nisa, okay. About the education, primary education and violence. Actually, I'm working on the criminal justice aspect, and right now, for the last 2 years, we're facing the problem on the juvenile justice system. On the juvenile, there is an increasing number of children, mostly male, committed violence, and we are also now conducting a research on survey, investigating the attitudes toward gender violence for the young people, because we also facing the problem on femicide, the increasing number of femicide, and we know that femicide is also the escalation of the gender attitude, gender attitude to the young people. And I want to know your thoughts about how should we invest on the education to prevent the gender-based violence and also prevent the escalation of gender-based violence that could be a form of the femicide, form of the homicide, and violent culture and violent society. Yeah, that's all my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Should I wait for another question?
Yes.
Okay.
We take one more question.
Okay.
before we answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Fiona? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your really fascinating presentations and for sharing your insights so generously with us this afternoon. I wondered whether any research had been done linking child marriage, so young girls marrying prematurely, maybe in line with the law, and what that means for economic empowerment of women, and whether we can see perhaps direct causal links between that and a drop-off in women's economic participation. Thank you.
I think we take the first question first on online gender-based violence and how school can do something about it. Like what's to prevent.
Yes. So our education system, as obviously, like I mentioned earlier, it's not about learning outcomes. It's not about opportunity to go to school. But what happened in the school is still problematic in terms of gender violence. And also, we had. When in 2024, last year, we worked very closely with the Ministry of Education and Culture back then, and then with the team who got a report from schools, middle schools, about the violence they experience from their teachers. So this, the power inequality between the students and the teachers still problematic, and that is one of the, there are a lot of, to me, it's like one is too many, but this is more than one, obviously, reports that we get from the students. But interestingly, if you see the report card, the national data shows that even though it's not publicly available, but we saw the data and we could see that there are more male students reporting that they are getting harassed by their friends and their teachers compared to female students. But if you pay attention to the qualitative response about that, sometimes the female students, they don't want to report, like mentioned earlier in the opening, that some females chose not to report the violence they experience. And some of them are still ambiguous. They feel like, I don't know whether it is a violence. I'm not sure if it is violence or not.
Like in gray area. Yeah.
In gray area, and because it's almost normal happening in the school. So that is one factor. And the other factors that also happening recently, we got the information from teachers and parents also, is about the impact of the online game among male students. Not only they disengage from learning process, but also they have problems in regulating their emotions. So like I said, that PSPK, we see education problems as not only what's happening in the school, but also outside the schools, because we believe that all the children's experience will influence their development and academic success. So that's part of the report, and school feels like, oh, that's not, some schools still feel like, oh, that's not our problem because it happens outside the school building, you know. So I agree that this is a problem that we have to deal with all together, not only the school system, but also the family institutions should take part in this, and also the government should make like a clearer regulation about this. So I think that's my response, and whether the schools contribute to that, I would still say I don't know. Honestly, I don't want to accuse them contributing to that, but what I can say is that they do not contribute to the solution yet. That's the problem. And the second question.
The second one is actually a bit
interesting. Yeah, but I probably want to touch base a little bit about that in terms of the dropout. There's a correlation between dropout rate and child marriage in some areas in Indonesia, especially in Nusa Tenggara areas, because there are studies conducted there. Not to say that it happens more there than other parts of Indonesia, but some studies are very specific areas, and in Nusa Tenggara Barat, it was found that there's a correlation. However, it is a correlation. We still don't know yet whether it is because the schools are not available, not affordable for the female students, or because they are getting married so they drop out. So it can be one or another. Because we found some families says that they decided to let the female girl, the girl to get married, the daughter to get married, because schools become more and more expensive and there's no return of investment of schooling compared to getting married. So it's not that simple that dropout school causes child marriage or the child marriage causes the dropout school, but what we can do as an advocate for education policy is to have like affordable and high quality education that really bring impact to their life, that really can help them to have a social mobility that could help them to make better decision to continue education.
But you want to add something?
I want to add some point about the child marriage. Another story from Nusa Tenggara Barat, from Lombok. The young women and girls there, they have no ambition to get better life because the mindset of the community itself, the woman will get married, will become a mother, will take care of their family. So they are not busy at all. They have no ambitions. They are not thinking about higher education. Besides, the family cannot afford also the education. So having a lack of education, having lack of creativity, having a lack of another thoughts to get a better life. I will be married someday, why don't I get married now? Because I am not busy. So we can see these things back to the mindset of the community. So the young women and girls thinking that way, we realize that we need to form some women leader of each community to change the mindset. They has to be someone having better thoughts, having better confidence to show that we can. So
like a role model.
We've tried to.
So you need a role model.
We've tried to build the role model of each community.
Which under your program you do that. Okay, I think we have to stop here. We are already running out of time, but thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mbak Nilam, for a very insightful session.
I will do a bit more of a formal introduction about your backgrounds and how well qualified you are to be talking about these
Pressure.
But just to say a couple of words as an introduction. I know that a lot of colleagues here work in this field, whether through the climate angle, through the gender angle, or through multiple other areas of work which have direct connection with these two areas. And I know that none of this ever works in isolation. But I just wanted to say a couple of things about how critical this subject is. Climate is one of our major focuses for the embassy here in Jakarta. We invest 95% of all of our official development assistance into the area of climate, and the angle on women and girls is also one of the absolute fundamentals for the UK government that is constantly highlighted by our ministers in London as an area that we have to make sure is front and centre of how we deliver all of our work for the UK government. And when we think about climate and the way the two themes interact, we know that women are the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And when we think about vulnerability, we can't escape the fact that a lot of the livelihoods that women have around the world are areas that are directly affected by the impacts of the climate crisis that we're dealing with. On an international level, women and children comprise of over 80% of all displacements by climate-related disasters. So we know that it is a massive theme that we're dealing with. And gender inequality more broadly, it creates huge burdens and barriers for women and girls during conflict and during especially climate-related crises. It increases risks around hunger, around food insecurity, around violence. But we know that also women are front and center of the response to this, and they have fundamental roles to drive the long-term climate resilience. Whether that be in policy planning, whether that be in projects through implementation of adaptation programs, through broader gender equality, and the question of financing. So I just wanted to say a few points there, and obviously that's a lot about the international context, but hopefully with the panel today we can touch on some of the experience at the Indonesia level as well. So just to introduce our panelists, Ibu Dwi. Ibu Dwi is the country director at Oxford Policy Management Indonesia. OPMI is the implementing partner for one of our major climate programs here in Jakarta. That's called LCDI, the Low Carbon Development Initiative, that aims to integrate climate agenda across development planning. And Ibu Dwi has vast experience in areas related to climate, people, nature, environments for over 17 years, so very well experienced to talk on these matters. And Ibu Mauda, from my research, you seem to have multiple jobs in multiple areas at the same time. You're the chairperson of the Indonesia Solar Energy Association, the AESI, the founder of Enetek Mitra Solusi, and you're also part of the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce. Through your work in energy efficiency and solar and renewable energies, you are a partner of our UK PACT programme, the Partnering for Accelerated Climate Transition, which is again one of our major programmes working here in Indonesia. So without further ado, I would like our panellists to say some opening remarks just on the topic, and then I'll have some guiding questions that we can hopefully dive into, and then open up to colleagues to quiz you further. But maybe let's start with Ibu Dwi.
Okay, thank you, Freddie. Is it on? Or okay, yeah, thank you, Freddie, and thank you, Amanda, for hosting us, and thank you, everyone. I think this is also a really good chance. The climate angle and this International Women's Day, I think that's a very good alignment between the two topics. So yeah, my name is Dwi, and I'm currently part of the implementation team for the Low Carbon Development Initiative. What's interesting about the project is that the project is really trying to mainstream the low carbon development, which basically trying to see how actually we can reduce the greenhouse gases emission in Indonesia together with Bappenas as our main counterpart. But the idea of still reducing the greenhouse gas emission is still also seeing how Indonesia can achieve the 8% GDP target as mentioned by our current President Prabowo, right? So that whole balance between how to achieve the GDP target but still maintaining the low carbon development pathways is the project, what the project is all about. And for the gender part, so this is where I think this is interesting. Definitely from FCDO, it's always a key part to include and to mainstream the GETC element, right? The gender equality, disability, social inclusion element into the project. So we really mainstream, so there are two ways of us in approaching or like ensuring that the GETC element is embedded throughout the project. So the first one is the mainstreaming the project mainstreaming the GETC element into the project itself. So basically that's including also when we provide technical assistance to the RPJM and to the midterm development plan, which actually also definitely derive from the RPJPN and all of this other abbreviations, development planning. I'm sure you all already know about it. But we're trying to make sure that the GETC element is being considered as the cross-cutting element. So, for example, when we're working with the provincial level, they will have the local version, right? RPJMD. So, what are the indicators used in the RPJMD? Then we need to also we have a capacity building, for example, to make sure that the indicators in the local level are also considering the GETC element, for example. So those are like one of the steps that we do in ensuring that the GETC element is really being considered into the development planning, so that we can achieve the climate goal for Indonesia. So maybe that's a start. I'll give it to Mbak Amanda. Mbak Mada, sorry.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Freddie and Amanda, for having me here. Also, a new friend here. I like to see to know of you. My name is Mada. Now I'm the chairperson for the IC. IC is Solar Association Indonesia. So now our association has 97 members, and I'm quite proud here because I'm the first chairperson in IC after the third chairmanship in IC itself, and I become the one of only woman amongst the energy association in Indonesia. It means shows that Indonesia now elevate the gender inclusion in how to do the leadership of the association itself. So from what Freddie said, and I follow what Dwi said, that climate is one of the important for all of us, especially for us women, because from my own experience, during this, I almost working in this field like since 2008, so almost like 17 years in this energy field. I saw that very little women join this the industry. Some of them say that from my sharing with a lot of colleagues, because they said that the society seems they don't like giving the approval if woman goes to like, especially for the renewable energy, they go for the remote area. That's the hardest thing, because sometimes they think that that's only for men, especially when you know Indonesia is coming consists of islands, and then sometimes if you want to go to sites, you have to use like for 3 types transportation. First, aeroplane, of course, and then you go by car, and then you have to across the island through the boat, something like that. So some of them think that this one is for male only. So I think the stigma that we have to reduce here is actually woman has the same voice, the same opportunity here, because we have the same ability. Yeah, we have the same ability as a man to do all the project, same in the remote area. I think that's for my start for the opening. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, I think I'd like to begin with the consideration of all the ways in which the climate crisis affects women, and we can look at that from multiple different angles. But I'd be interested to hear from you both a few examples in which you think women are disproportionately affected by climate change, and then maybe we can then look at some of the solutions to this from a programmatic policy financing perspective, and definitely a leadership perspective. But I'd be interested to hear about in what ways do you see the impacts of climate change disproportionately affecting them.
Yeah, Amanda, you can start.
Yeah, based from my experience through my project, and thank you also for the UK program, through the Mentari program, because I'm the
cat situation.
Yeah, because I'm the received the beneficiary of one of Mentari program. So we had a project in Central Kalimantan area, which this area is very, very remote. From Jakarta, I think we have to take like maybe 10 hours by aeroplane, car, and then boat. And then in this village, there is only like 100 of houses, something like that. And then most of them are women and children. And I asked, when I visited there, I asked, where is the guy? Where is the head of the family? And they said that, oh, they work outside because here there is nothing to do to get, for example, like, for working properly there. And so the men going outside and the woman's living there without any education. So in the afternoon, what they are doing is like scratching each other back, something like that. Really, literally like scratching back, and then they're doing nothing, and then just gossiping here and there, something like that. So when I asked them, why don't you do something productive? And then they said that, oh, because we don't have any electricity here. And I said that if we can provide you electricity, what will you do then? And then they said that, okay, if you can give us electricity and also some tools, like for example, like blender, mixer, something like that, so we can make the fish chip, because there has a lot of potential of fish there, ikan gabus. And then if you can provide us electricity and those tools for us to making the chips, so we can make, like, we call it like economic development. So me and the team, finally we had a survey, we make a feasibility study, and now we're starting doing the project. This is almost done. We starting to do the commissioning in this village. And what we built there is one of the refugee center, because every 6 months the village is being flooded, and almost like you cannot do nothing, because full of what the water level almost like 2.5 meters. So it's very hard for you to go for working, or you can find a food, something like that. So we made a refugee center, and then we provide also for the solar PV there, and we also do the giving a train for them, like a training for how you make the waste, something like that. And then we also create some like mini factory there for the ikan gabus. I don't know what is in English.
You can do.
Yeah, gabus is okay. So because we can extract the albumin from the fish itself. So I think if we can provide the woman with tools, the facility, the infrastructure, I think woman can do more than as a housewife or just taking care of the family.
Thank you, Mbak. I think I have definitely similar experience. I mean, when previously when I work in the, I used to work with a small organization as well, and definitely what is really evident in the impact of climate change is that women work in climate sensitive sectors. So all of the sectors like in agriculture, fisheries, informal sectors. So those are have mostly women as a labor, meaning that these sectors are the one that is often negatively affected by climate change. Any climate change events like any drought, flood, it's going to be affecting them, and then they're going to be the one who's dramatically affected, and not just because they are the one who's become the labor, but they're also having less authority in making the decision, because the role of the woman, I think we need to also unpack that the role of the woman in this in the labor is also just as the labor, not as the decision maker. So that whole decision in the household, like, so who, what role should we take? Like, should we do this? Should we do that? What should the saving be used? Like, should the saving be used as an education, or like, should we buy more crops, or should we move to a safer place? That whole decision is being made by the men, right? The male leader of the household. So those kind of imbalanced power also even make the woman's position in a weaker place, and I think that's even more making women at a weaker position as affected by the climate change. And also, I think if we talk about climate, then we need to, I think, start to talk about the climate displacement, right? Like, I mean, now in Indonesia, even it's, I think, getting apparent. No one really thought that, you know, flood is affected by climate change. It's not really, you know, direct causation, but I think we really need to see that, or like start to think that there is a point, or like it is correlated one in another. And the migration, it's also going to affect women and children especially. So that's going to affect, like, in health, definitely education, and definitely it's maybe gender-based violence is going to be also highly affected. So I think definitely women are highly majorly affected by climate change, and in a way of how should we actually sort of like solve that, or like, you know, intervene, or like provide some solution. I think that's also definitely like a lot of ways to do that. There are like sort of some short ways, responsive, you may be like a more humanitarian ways to support that, like a more short-term support, but definitely there should be something more systematic, right? Like something that is intervening the policy, something that is more regulatory basis, something that we need to see from time to time, and we need to be patient and see what are the result in the next 3 years, 5 years, because it's not something that should be happen overnight. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. It's really interesting. Sometimes when you think about the particular sectors that are affected, climate-sensitive sectors like agriculture, and the impact of droughts or floods, it's a very sort of direct causation in terms of the impact that it have on a predominant female labour force. But then when you think about in the domestic setting, it's much more nuanced, and it takes a few steps, but it's no less concerning. If you think about, you mentioned the gender-based violence aspect and how that might be exacerbated, escalated by climate crises, or if you're thinking about some of the gender roles that exist in terms of women spending disproportionate amount of time cooking, often without electricity, so they're using fossil fuels, and the worse air quality that leads to, or when there's a climate crisis and land is destroyed and women have less secure land tenure or access to resources and these sorts of things. So there are so many different angles that this can be considered at, and it's really interesting to hear the perspectives. One of the major solutions is around empowerment and female leadership. So I'd be interested to hear from you both around in what ways gender empowerment or gender equality, female empowerment, and having senior female leaders fighting the causes of, or the questions around climate change, climate resilience, climate adaptation, how that can have a major influence in pushing back on this crisis.
Yeah, no, thank you, Freddie. I think I also agree earlier with, I think Mbak Nilam said this, right? Like definitely there's a lack of example in leadership, in women, maybe not even women in climate change, even female leadership, like a strong female leadership. I think that's still also very lacking. If I remember it correctly, there's an event, SDG event, saying that even in echelon 1, so deputy level, in dirjen level in the ministries, there's only 20% women in the deputy level. So that's very minimum, right? So not even to mention climate. So definitely we need like a more examples of climate, of female leadership, and definitely on climate. Why? Because one, definitely it shows examples, right? Like female leadership will have like a more understanding of the situation, and then like having more comprehensive understanding of the situation, and also showing basically leading with evidence. I think that's like really showing evidence, and can show to other people that this can be actually happening, and definitely it can also give like a more access, like to giving access to like a more opportunities, and so it can be giving more examples. I think that maybe that's just the key ideas. Yes, Mbak.
Adding to Mbak Dwi, maybe the characteristic of woman itself is nurturing. So I think woman leadership is very important in this case because they like to nurture the thing as if their son or daughter, something like that. So in my perspective, from my own example in association, we choose like a woman 37% higher than previously. So I think I just want to show that woman has the same opportunity, because if nobody wants to open the access, so woman cannot go to the resources where she can do do her potential, something like that. So I think when I saw from this association itself, I saw that women more actively promoting the renewable energy than a male. Sorry, but I think this is true because they want to engage more. Like women like to talk, like to give impact to the society, something like that. So I think it will be good for them if they have a position in the community. So she can like giving a leadership to others, also to giving an example, the real evidence, as you said, doing. I think it will be good for the climate leadership for a woman itself. And from the evidence, as you mentioned, now I've been like 8 months as the chairperson of the IC. It's already like 37, or we can say like 60% higher engagement or the member who joined the IC before the previous one. And I asked why they want to like join the IC right now rather than previous one. They said that because the way you lead this association give us like a warm feeling. So they feel like you hear what our obstacle, you find the solution, and you take care of us like a mother. So I think this is an evidence that woman can lead one of our organization in Indonesia.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really, really interesting. That statistic that women are more likely to promote renewable energy is fascinating. Something I'd love to dig down into in terms of what are maybe some of these biases or aspects that we wouldn't immediately jump to, or the different perspectives that women have on different energy choices. It's really, really interesting. Given that we're tight on time, I'd like to maybe pose one final question myself, but then also put it together with maybe any questions that we might have from the floor before we have some final wrap-ups from the panelists, please. So, from your experiences on your respective programs, can you give an example of where we've had a good example where gender perspectives have been successfully fed into climate policy? So that's one question, and maybe if we could quickly gather one or two maximum from the floor, if there are some.
Good afternoon, panelists and moderator. Thank you so much for the very insightful thoughts and experiences that you shared. I'm Audrey, and I'm from the Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, or the ICGR. So I'd like to ask more to the works that the ICGR have done and how to contextualize in this massive issue, regarding climate change and gender. So recently, the ICGR just developed a model regarding the protection for women's human rights defenders. This model works for the officials or the state authorities in handling criminal cases. So the context is in criminal cases, because as of now, the protection for human rights defenders are centralized in one regulation, which is the Environmental Management and Protection Law, and thus departing from this framework. Also, I think from what that we had mentioned recently regarding this concern on the labor sectors, whereas women mostly work under that field. there's a huge urgency in injecting gender perspectives, considering that there is increasing of report against women human rights defender who work in this field, and particularly for women who fight for environmental rights and those who face agrarian crisis. And I'd just like to ask the panelists regarding this issue, what strategy or approach that you apply in order to unravel this red thread on this issue, and in order to uphold women's fundamental rights and mainstream the issue of climate change and the direct implications towards women in Indonesia specifically, because we cannot put a blind eye on that climate change is still something issue that we face every day, but it felt quite distant from our daily perspective. So yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. It was really amazing to hear what your explanations about the connection of genders. Introducing myself, I'm Nikki Kala, I'm coming from Reproductive and one of the digital access programs partners. What we are doing is really talking about inclusions in an every. We really thinking about the inclusion in every aspect. And we understanding that the population of persons with disability will be increasing, and also it's also related about by 2030 the population of agings in Asia, especially Asia Pacific, will be increasing. And but the thing is, when we're talking about the climate change and the gender, sometimes inclusion is not included in the issue and also the solution of that. So, but the thing is, when we're talking about the population of aging and people with disability, one words when we're talking about the solution is about the accessibility. I want to ask to both of you, what do you think about the global development strategies when we're talking about the accessibility and also the universal design, when we're taught about the increasing of people with disability and also the increasing of the population of aging in Asia Pacific, and especially in climate change and the gender equality in every aspects when we're talking about inclusion itself. Thank you.
Boleh. Sure.
Okay, yeah, very easy. Maybe I can answer from the
Nikki.
Mbak Nikki, okay. So from the program itself, as you mentioned that do we have a program that support for inclusivity. Now we working all together with special school, sekolah luar biasa.
Yeah, SLB.
For
special school.
Special school for
deaf.
Children with deaf. So they have an access to work in also in renewable energy as a drafter. So I already talked to the member of our association if they can accept internship for these deaf kids, because they said that the deaf kids has the special. They are diligent and also very focused when they are doing something. So I think being a drafter, it will be good also, especially for now, as we know that solar PV is very popular and everybody wants to use it. So we had a lack of expertise for designing the design for the solar PV itself. So we talked to this special school to we can do a training to their kids how to be a drafter, and then after that do the internship in our association. And also last week we had a discussion with them also how our website can be accessed not only for the deaf but also people with a special needs. For example, if they are blind, deaf, and etc. So I think that's one of the program in my association, and also we do the encouragement for a woman get the higher level. So now we also have a program like IC Goes to Campus, which we want to share not only like males here can work in renewable energy industry, the one who will train it also a woman here, like from 4 our expert, 1 is a man and then 3 is a woman. So I think that's want to show that woman can be powerful also.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mbak. Maybe I'll answer it bit by bit. So in terms of policy, so if it's like our particular program at the moment, because we're still like in the middle of the program, so maybe not yet translated into policy yet, but what we're trying to do at the moment is really providing a technical assistance, providing recommendation, and we fit that into the government. We fit that into Bappenas, for example, and also ensuring that it's being uptaken or like also forwarded it to the right or like to the relevant ministry. So for example, if it's like particular recommendation on GETSI in energy, then we talk to the Ministry of ESDM, the Energy Mineral Resources, for example. So there are still several steps for us to make sure that all of this recommendation is being uptaken by the right ministry. So those are some key areas. And also in the subnational level, basically it's the same sort of approach. But like, for example, in the previous sort of program, basically when we do sort of like policy development, policy adoption, so those are the things. Those are the things that we do. So in the previous forestry project, that's also from FCDO. So related with the gender, so it might not be an exact policy, but like it's more of like there are recognition of women as a key actors in the as an entrepreneur for to promote legal timber in Indonesia. So there's like a really recognized in that area. So that's like one of the key results as well. And then to answer both of Mbak question, maybe this is like more general answer, I think. Like, so definitely your like ICGR, it's a quite complex sort of issues, right? Like, you know, like from criminal, and then we need to break it down into environment, and then there's like also gender. So maybe there are, I think, several steps that we need to do, basically like to unpack everything. But like, we need to find the entry points. I think maybe this answer works both ways. We just need to find the entry points where gender can actually take the right roles into both of your issues, right? So for example, let's unpack what are actually covering in the ICGR that you want to approach at the moment, and where actually this gender can be inserted, and who are actually the key players, right? And so those are your sort of like entry points, and that's where we can come in. I think that's sort of like, you know, the very simplified answer for this, you know, short discussion, but I'm happy to follow up, like, you know, if there's any, I'm happy to be the think tank or whatever it is you can call, like just to have a chat on how to move this forward, basically. Yeah, maybe that's from my side.
Great, thank you so much. And I realise this is a huge area and we've got limited time, but I hope there'll be additional space, I think, through the session to ask additional questions and to continue some of the conversations. So without further ado, just a big thank you to you both for your time today and for contributing your thoughts, and thank you for all your efforts in delivering our programs as well on behalf of the embassy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also support Timor-Leste by working on the Timor-Leste Child Nutrition and Welfare Program, which is focused on behavioral nutritional changes. In all these programs, we value the participation of women by having them in key roles and providing training to enhance their capacity and so to improve the quality of healthcare services. I want to thank our partners, United Nations Population Fund Indonesia, with who we have been working with together on the midwifery capacity advancement for that word is very hard for me, for equitable sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, which is called MARCH project. The MARCH project aims to strengthen the role of midwives and improve the skills set in Indonesia. This will be critical to improving maternal and neonatal health outcomes as well advancing sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. I also want to thank our partner think tank, who we have been collaborating with to strengthen digital health transformation ecosystem in Indonesia through Reproductive Health and digital health transformation strategy. We value the importance of creating inclusive digital health services, in fact, emphasizing the utilization of digital health and persons with disabilities, and underserved and moving towards gender equality. Today, we are also pleased to have Mr. Hassan Montashami with us. Thank you very much. Mr. Montashami is the representative of United Nations UNFPA. Thank you very much. We are also pleased to have Dr. Sandeep Nanwani, who is the program specialist for sexual and reproductive health for UNFPA. Both experts will participate in the subsequent discussion. Sorry, it's going to be you. And answer critical questions on sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. I also want to thank Samuel Josephat Wadam, Public Health Principal Think Policy, who will also participate in this important discussion. Thank you very much for being here. So our topic is the importance of promoting equitable and inclusive sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. So the first question is about, I would like to discuss first the importance of gender equality in delivering healthcare services to create a better outcome for public health in Indonesia.
Yeah. Thank you. I would just like to mention it's, I think, the first time that two men are speaking about sexual reproductive health, because in the field it's all women. So it's really a unique moment. But I just wanted to mention two points. The first thing is that sexual reproductive health directly contributes to gender equality, but also GBV affects health outcomes. So there's these two ways in which we think about how gender and health are interrelated. The first way in which health, or sexual reproductive health, directly contributes to gender equality, we can see it through the life course, even before birth. So even before birth, we see the problem of gender-biased sex selection, in which there's some preference, in which if through USG, if they find out that the fetus is a woman, they abort the fetus, and then we have the problem of gender-biased sex selection. And if the numbers are not even equal between men and women, then how do you achieve gender equality? So there is a sexual reproductive health issue even before birth. But when you see throughout adolescence, or even in the child, FGM causes severe health consequences as well. And then we see adolescent pregnancies, child marriage, which make youth drop out of school, go into informal work, and then when you see unplanned pregnancy, multiple unplanned pregnancies, that would lead to women out of jobs, more care work, more domestic work, less participation in the workforce and economy. So then we have maternal issues. Many women in Indonesia die during giving birth. And then we move on and you have breast cancer, cervical cancer. So having good sexual and reproductive health and realizing reproductive rights directly contributes to gender equality, because the flip narrative is we have a woman, a girl that is fully informed of on sexual and reproductive health, can choose when to marry, can choose when to have a child, can choose to have a child or not to have a child, can have planned pregnancies, can have a safe delivery, can have good quality health care, can have good work-life balance, has a good spacing between births so that they can take care of their child, they can also work at the same time, can participate in economy. And so sexual reproductive health directly contributes to gender equality. But we also see the flip narrative, in which gender-based violence has devastating health impacts. So we can see, like, for instance, Survivors of gender-based violence are 2 times more likely to have unsafe abortion. Survivors are 4 times likely to have more suicide ideation, 3 times more likely to have a depression, 1.5 times likely more to acquire HIV. So we have GBV directly also affects health outcomes that causes morbidities and mortality. So in the way we see it as investing in sexual reproductive health directly contributes to gender equality. But we also note that GBV has severe and devastating health outcomes, including for sexual and reproductive health, like HIVs, unsafe abortion, and a lot more, and a lot of evidence on that. A lot of amount of data on that. So that's from my side.
Okay. So yeah, Sandeep has excellently summarized and highlighted the importance of SRHR for gender equality and also the flip narrative. I'd like to draw our attention on the bigger picture, probably gender as one of the social determinants of health, and it really plays a role in access to healthcare. And when we talk about access to healthcare, we would have to see it from 2 perspectives: from the supply side, but also from the demand side. So from the providers, but also from the users, women especially. And when we talk about access to healthcare, we also need to understand that this access to healthcare is it has stages of it. Like first, you need to be able to know your health needs, and then you need to be able to seek healthcare, and then you need to be able to reach the healthcare facilities. You need to be able to pay for the healthcare and to utilize the healthcare. So it's a stepwise process. And from the user's point of view, in this case, the women, we know that gender inequity, the differences in education, in economy, will affect their ability to understand their health needs, to get information, seek healthcare, pay for healthcare, etc. So, of course, from the user's point of view, gender really plays a big role in access to healthcare. But what is often ignored is that gender issues also play a big role in the supply side, because the underrepresentation of women among those who manage healthcare, those who make policies, make decisions, plan the healthcare systems, will prevent the healthcare to be women-centered and women-oriented. So I think that's what I like to add and highlight about the importance about gender and access to healthcare.
Thank you very much. And I have a question about that. Do you think if women are more involved in shaping the healthcare policies and services, that will change? Do you think?
So the data in Indonesia suggests that 75% of the actors of the health workforce are women. However, a bulk of the work done by healthcare providers, especially nurses and midwives and community health workers, are often undervalued and underpaid, and they have less access to a career pathway. So while the health sector is dominated by women, including up to the DG level, and if you look at the data at the district level, but the care work is not really acknowledged. From the community health worker to the midwife and the nurse that does a bulk of the care, much of the money and acknowledgement of work goes to the specialists and the doctors. So that's having more grassroots workers involved, acknowledged and respected would really change the way in which healthcare is delivered. It will be more responsive as well. There is interesting data that I can share. Women in Indonesia, from lots of surveys from years and years, choose to go to a midwife to do delivery. They pay out of pocket and choose to go to a midwife to do delivery, even though next to the midwife private practice there is functioning basic emergency obstetric care that gives it free of choice, free of charge. They choose to go to a midwife because, of course, midwives know, the nurses know, they listen, they know, and they understand what women need, and that's part of the philosophy of their profession. So this is an issue in healthcare and decision making. While the health sector is dominated by women, there is still a lack of acknowledgement, especially of community health workers, which is mostly women, and nurses and midwives, and most of the acknowledgement is to the specialists, and there's a hierarchy founded on patriarchy amongst the doctors and nurses and community health workers.
Thank you very much. It's very important to really emphasize on their work and how they are really supporting the community there. Thank you very much for that. So now I would like to discuss the challenges of sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights access in Indonesia. The healthcare workforce is essential in providing critical sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights services such as ensuring safe pregnancies and birth, offering pre- and postnatal education, supporting family planning, facilitating safe abortions, and addressing issues like gender-based violence and menstrual health. So first, I would like to explore the health consequences for women due to lack of access to sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights.
Yeah, so Indonesia is a bit of a paradox when we think about access and outcomes, because we know that 97% of the deliveries, for instance, in Indonesia is helped by a health professional. Out of that, more than 80% are midwives that help women during delivery. Yet, Indonesia has around 8,000 women die every year due to pregnancy or due to delivery. 1 in 280 women are at risk of dying because of a birth. Compared to Sri Lanka, which is far more poorer than Indonesia, it's 1 in 1,700. In Norway, it's 1 in 14,000. So Indonesia has one of the highest maternal mortalities in the region, comparable to Timor-Leste actually. Whereas when you look at the economy, Indonesia should be comparable to Malaysia, Thailand, and we're still lagging behind. And one of the problems is access to quality service. So there is access to services, but access to skilled, competent, quality services remains an issue. And this is further exacerbated by geographic disparities. We know in East Indonesia, access to surgeries, life-saving blood transfusions and things like that is far worse than it is in Java. But I can tell you, 4 hours from here, we have a pilot, and up to today, 8 women have died in birth. And last year, 50 women died in one district. So that's how near it is from us, the problem. So yes, geographic disparities do affect access. Outside that, we have, that's essential services. In terms of family planning, with this efficiency, we have huge budget cuts in the commodities. In the FP commodities provided by the public sector. So they have been cut the budget, and this is devastating. As you know, most of the contraceptives are provided by the public sector. And then the third thing is GBV services. So GBV services remains not available. So we have data, Ministry of Health data suggests that only 20% of hospitals can actually provide care for survivors, medical care for survivors. So that's completely unacceptable. In a country like Indonesia, only 20% of the services are available. And we don't know about their quality. It's just availability at this point for GBV. And then, of course, there are legal barriers for unmarried people, young people, and a lot of social norms as well that shape access to sexual reproductive health. And then care for survivors is also including care for abortion and things like that remains unavailable. Even basic care for survivors, only 20%. So it is a big gap in Indonesia. So in essential care, it's access to quality, but in specific issues like GBV, there is no access at all at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you. I believe one of the problems as well, the lack of healthcare workers in rural areas, right?
Yeah.
They are usually more in the cities. And you were also mentioning about gender-based violence. And I was wondering if they are also focused on post-trauma or it's just the...
Yeah, so we have this framework for GBV services called Listen, and it's a basic support. So at the primary healthcare center, usually by a midwife, they should be able to provide basic support. But for documentation and legal, it has to be done by a physician trained to do documentation and legal, and also abortion and all the other kinds of services like PrEP and all the services required for a GBV if they choose to do so. So and that's not available. We don't have data, and midwives are actually providing the first line of support to survivors. But usually, what we have data is that survivors usually go to health providers as a first
Point of contact.
First help. So that's the data we have. In terms of distribution of the workforce, we know that Indonesia has a surplus of midwives and nurses. So it's well distributed, including in areas like Papua and Aceh. But are they competent? And are they supported? So when we talk about competent, it's not only whether they were afforded or provided good education, but also are they supported with enabling policies and continuing professional development? And that, as I said, even in Jawa, that's not true. So they are well distributed. But what is more concerning is that in East Indonesia, they are the only first-line providers. There is literally nobody else, not even a GP. And so the community trusts them, and they have to provide that services. And so that remains an issue. So when women die because of lack of an OBGYN, the community blames the midwife for that. And so there is a whole issue on that as well. So that's the current landscape, maybe, Sam.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to add something from a different angle from the project that we're working with British Embassy Jakarta, of course, on digital health. So digital health has been thought to be one of the potential solutions for access to healthcare, including for women. And yeah, evidence from abroad has shown that digital health technologies can improve women's access to healthcare and also empower them in decision making about their health through solutions that can remove the barriers of space and time and bringing more efficiency, also giving more privacy and confidentiality in the service. But the fact is, there's this issue of intersectionality. So yes, overall access of women might be improved, but which parts of the women groups that enjoy the facilities? It's usually the more affluent ones, the more educated ones, certain ethnic groups probably. Yeah, so I think the issue within the digital health realms is the intersectionality. And I think data from Indonesia also shows a similar case. At the end of 2023, the users of Satu Sehat Mobile, I think most of you would have it because during the COVID pandemic era, we have this Peduli Lindungi and it turns to Satu Sehat Mobile. There were 56 million users with almost balanced composition between men and women. But only 3 million of them are elderly beyond 60 years. While actually our population statistics, UNFPA deals a lot with that. I think it's 12% of all populations are actually elderly. So compared to that, we see that the younger populations are the ones who can enjoy this digital healthcare services more. And also, comparing the data of Satu Sehat Mobile with the private providers, because with the British Embassy, we are assessing major telemedicine and telehealth providers. You might heard of those big brands and might be using them as well. We see that there's a big difference between men and women male and female users of those applications. It's dominated mostly by male, so the comparison is 3 compared to 5. That's really interesting, except for applications that's used for nutrition and maternal and child care, of course, SRHR thing, dominated by women. We don't know the reason yet, but it may be, it might have something to do with the ability to pay for the services, because it's private providers. So it's different from the government applications, Satu Sehat Mobile. This one is, it's different. So yeah, I think those are the issues with access to healthcare in digital health services.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point of view. So we also have to work on digital health literacy for the most vulnerable customers.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. So now we are going to talk about the roles of midwives in advocating and facilitating access for sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. So midwives play a vital role in advocating for and facilitating access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights services. They are often the first point of contact for women seeking care, providing crucial support in areas like family planning, maternal health, and sexual health. Data shows that women who receive midwife play continuity of care provided by professionally trained and regulated midwives to international standards are 16% less likely to lose their babies and 24% less likely to experience a preterm birth. This highlights the critical role of midwives in improving maternal and infant health outcomes. So my question is, what are the specific challenges faced by midwives in delivering sexual reproductive health and reproductive rights services effectively, and how can we address them?
Yeah, so in order to reap the promise of midwifery, to really reap that promise, as the data you said, we need 3 things. We need competency, we need the midwives need to be regulated and need to be integrated into the health system. In terms of competency, midwives, education for midwives at the moment do not meet minimum international standards. That's a big issue in Indonesia, the education of midwives. There is also a problem of no mechanism available to ensure competency during relicensing, because in the health profession, you lose your competency unless you actually get cases. If you don't get cases, you lose it. And so we need to maintain and ensure that during relicensing, midwives are competent, and that system is not available. So that's the thing in competency. In terms of regulation, private midwifery practice, which is where women go to, they choose to go to, they pay out of pocket to go there, is not regulated. Out of 35,000 private midwifery facilities, only 7,000 are registered in the Ministry of Health, so they're completely unregulated. And that is not helpful for the women, but also not helpful for the midwives, because they don't get treated and get supported. And then the last thing is about integration into health system. Midwives do not have a career pathway within the system. So once they graduate, they are there in the primary healthcare, and then they open private practice to add additional income. And if there's no more income, what they do is they do harmful practice, which is FGM. We know that in urban areas, 45% of the FGM is done by midwives. So all of this challenges on competency, regulation, and integration into health system, including pay and career pathway, really drives the ecosystem, and in fact puts them into more private practice. It's like a vicious circle. Puts them into more private practice, and they do things that is not endorsed by medicine, like FGM, and can be harmful. So it is a huge vicious cycle, and we need to support midwives to break out of this vicious cycle by improving their education, regulating their practice, integrating into the health system, ensuring that salaries are equal to nurse and doctors, in fact, as they graduate. So there's a lot of work to do to break this vicious cycle around midwifery. Yet we know for certain that women choose that. So there's no way to not deal with them. so you cannot skip, because you can't just say, okay, let's close all the midwives and just have obstetricians do sexual reproductive health, because women choose that. So those are my 2 points.
Someone, I have a question for you then. When it comes to improving the education of the midwives, do you think the digital health system can help them?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I think, but I think we need to be very strategic with our interventions. Many people have this utopic vision that digital health can suddenly solve the problems of access in the remote areas, right? But in fact, many different areas would have different readiness, digital readiness, and infrastructures, and digital literacy play a big role in access to digital interventions. So when it comes to using digital technologies to improve midwives' education, I think we should be strategic in focusing those interventions in the more ready areas, like urban areas, cities, while we reallocate the resources that we save to the remote areas. So I think that's my take on that.
Thank you very much. That's a very important point. Thank you. So now the last question. So the use of digital health to provide equitable access of healthcare services we are going to talk about. So the use of digital health has accelerated since COVID-19 pandemic, with ongoing regulations now being processed by the government to ensure patient safety when using these services. However, the use of digital health has not been maximized, and the transformation needs to be patient-centered. How can we leverage digital health to enhance equitable access to healthcare services?
Okay, so when it comes to improving the access to digital healthcare services equitably for everyone, I think we will start with the availability first. So ensuring that infrastructures are available in different areas in Indonesia, digital literacy, I think is very important. But also developing these policies that ensure that digital healthcare provided by private sectors can also be available and be enjoyed by all groups of the populations. So with our regulatory sandbox process that we are working with the Ministry of Health, we try to assess the risks and the benefits of the digital health services provided by the private providers, and we try to use these instruments and standards, the norms, for accessibility and inclusion. So we check whether their applications can be accessed by elderly, the UI UX is easy enough to be utilized, and also whether or not people with disability can also enjoy that. For example, deaf people, can they access using text, subtitles or whatever, etc., etc. So I think making this as a norm when assessing our healthcare services, including digital healthcare services, is very important. Setting the standards. Then also, it's very important to gather disaggregated data. It sounds simple, but it's very important. When you gather the user's data, you will understand which part of the populations are enjoying it. Is it the woman, the man, the elderly, the children, age group, etc., etc. Their locations, etc. So I think disaggregated data will help us to understand the needs, the utilization of different groups of the population. And then I think we also need to, other than availability, we also need to improve acceptability by designing the applications according to their needs, their tailor-made, their specific needs, I think we will help them access the service better. And then affordability, we also need to find innovative funding schemes for digital healthcare services, because right now BPJS cannot cover digital healthcare services, while actually it promises solutions for many things. Also for GBV services, I think we should envision something using digital healthcare services, because one of my Instagram followers, she was sexually assaulted, and she asked me for referrals, and I referred her to the Sapa 129 service, and she found that it was quite helpful because it gives her privacy, confidentiality, chatting with the providers. I think digital healthcare services can really provide access to GBV survivors. Yeah, I think that's from me.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you. So I don't think we have much time. So if there are any questions, yes.
Hello, I'm Isha from Cameroon. It's quite interesting about your explanation about the midwife, especially because I have some of research also about the midwife in Nusa Tenggara. But I want to ask you something about the cultural aspect, because one of the challenges in Indonesia not about the facility, but also about the cultural aspect. Because some of women in Indonesia don't have a control about the body. How, especially if I got to option about the midwife or the doctor or the dukun beranak tuh. I don't have a control about that. So the control in my husband or my
family,
mother-in-law. So how about your opinion about the cultural aspect besides the facility about the health? Thank you.
The answer? Yeah. That's a very interesting question. I just looked at the data. So it's interesting that in Indonesia that 99, so there's a survey in 2017, DHS, that 99%, it's 99, which is quite surprising to me, that women directly go to health services without asking their partners. In family planning, in terms of making babies, in that sense, we have data that when a man is involved in the decision, they are more likely to make the decision faster, but most of the time women make the decision. However, while they fully informed when they make the decision is a big gap over here. So I completely agree with the idea of autonomy. But when autonomy is not simply like making the decision, but are you informed in that decision? You have the correct information, and it is really staggering. So 33% of adolescents, of youth, 19 years old above, know what is the fertile period. So and only 12% have comprehensive HIV knowledge in Indonesia. So and then when we look at the data on quality of family planning counseling, only 20% of the women that obtain family planning were actually informed of their choice or what methods that they are. So it is a problem on knowledge. There is a huge knowledge issue here. On whether there is accessibility decision issues. What we see is the data when it relates to money. So when they go to Puskesmas and they don't have to pay, women just go. But when it comes to referral, because they have a complication and so on, and they have to pay, then there's delays in decision, and that causes that. So there is a whole thing to unpack here on how social norms affect our knowledge on sexual reproductive health, what options you have, and basic things like what is consent, bodily autonomy. I gave a session to young people on sexual reproductive health, and on sexual desire actually, on how sexual desire is normal. It was a group of middle school. Between men and women, there's no difference in sexual desire. And then privately, a girl came up to me after the class and said, it is the first time I heard that there is no justification for violence, because what she's been taught is that men have a lot of sexual drive and it's okay for them to be violent, and she was a survivor. So that that certainly is a big issue in the side. But although the data might fool you, so if it's simple decision, they usually go to Puskesmas, but are they fully informed? It's fully shaped by the knowledge and they have. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you very much for everything. It was amazing, the conversation. I wish I could stay with you for 2 more hours. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.